Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome, everyone. Today, we've got a truly fascinating explainer that tackles one of the absolute most pressing issues of our time, climate change, and more specifically, how we actually govern our response to it. We're looking at a brilliant piece of analysis titled COP27 and Inclusive Climate Governance. It takes us on a journey from the very micro level of our daily personal lives all the way up to the massive macro level of global economics. Honestly, if you've ever wondered how your everyday personal choices actually connect to those huge international climate summits, well, this is exactly the explainer for you.
So the amazing insights we're unpacking today come from Oluyomi Oladavid. She is a Nigerian policy strategist and author who is just deeply, deeply concerned about global development and transformation. And what's really compelling about her approach is that she isn't just staring at dry statistics. She's looking at the actual people behind them. She clearly loves people, and she uses that exact perspective to generate real solutions and influence policy. Throughout her work, she asks the really hard, critical questions about our planet's future, placing a huge focus on human behavioral change.
Here's a quick roadmap for our explainer today. We'll start with 1, the climate crisis context, then move to 2, pillars of climate justice, 3, personal and household governance, 4, corporate and community action, 5, global climate finance, and finally, 6, leaving no pillar behind.
Let's jump into Section 1, the climate crisis context, a world under pressure. To really grasp her argument, we have to look at the intensely tense geopolitical and economic stage she sets right leading up to COP27. She points out that right now we are operating amidst some incredibly difficult, compounding crises. We're seeing an ongoing energy crisis in Europe. We are experiencing rising food inflationary episodes all around the globe. And as she notes, a really significant part of this economic strain is triggered by the impacts of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. She highlights these specific factors to show exactly why an inclusive climate governance approach isn't just some nice-to-have idea. It's absolutely urgently needed right now. The world is stressed, and our climate solutions simply have to account for that reality.
Moving right along to Section 2, Pillars of Climate Justice, Framing the Solution.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how she visualizes the solution. Oluyomi pictures climate justice as this temple, supported by 6 distinct pillars. Her central thesis here is absolutely vital. Human beings drive most institutional frameworks. Because of that, she argues that we can, and honestly we must, intentionally prioritize and incentivize behavioral change as a cultural approach to climate action. Just look at the pillars she identifies here: self-governance, household governance, corporate governance, community governance, national governance, and global governance. It's a complete interconnected ecosystem of responsibility.
Which brings us to Section 3, personal and household governance, starting with us.
Let's start with the very foundational pillar of her temple: individual, self-governed behavioral change. She poses this incredibly practical, yet deeply probing question to us. What perspectives and culture need to be entrenched so that individuals would prefer and actually choose not to litter public spaces? It sounds simple, right? But think about the profound cultural shift that's required to make that happen on a universal scale. She is heavily emphasizing our personal agency here. Basically, before we can even begin to talk about massive international treaties, we have to talk about what we do with our own waste on our own streets.
Expanding just slightly from the individual, she then moves up to the next pillar, household governance. She challenges us to consider what mechanisms might influence a restructure of the energy mix for household production. So now we're shifting from just individual habits to how our homes actually consume power. How do we heat our houses? How do we power our everyday appliances? She wants us to uncover what incentives or systems need to be in place so that sustainable energy becomes the absolute default choice for an average family.
All right, Section 4, Corporate and Community Action, Scaling Up Responsibility.
Here, Oluyomi contrasts 2 totally distinct business models: your traditional linear production, the old school take, make, and dispose way of doing things, versus circular firms. The pivotal question she's getting at is what specific policy positions might actually compel large companies to abandon those linear models and transform into circular firms. Specifically, she's looking for policies that incentivize the proper sorting, disposal, and recycling of plastic waste. She's really highlighting that corporate governance needs external policy pressure to fundamentally change how they operate day to day.
And she definitely doesn't stop at just manufacturing and production. Her focus then shifts right into the modern workplace itself. She asks, how can we galvanize actions towards ensuring more firms leverage hybrid work models? And why focus on that?
Well, to reduce the massive emissions generated by our daily commutes and urban transportation systems. This is a highly tangible, incredibly modern corporate governance strategy. Just by changing where we work a few days a week, businesses can have an absolutely massive, immediate impact on community-level pollution.
Now for Section 5, Global Climate Finance, the macro level. We've now reached the final, most overarching pillar she identifies: global governance and international economics. And right here, we face an incredibly high-stakes dilemma. She points out that more aid budget cuts by developed countries are imminent. So, given that harsh reality, what sustainable climate finance options are actually open to low-income developing countries? It's a pretty sobering thought. How on earth can we expect global compliance and development in green energy if the financial support for the world's most vulnerable nations is being pulled away? She really forces us to look at the massive inequities baked right into global climate action.
Finally, Section 6, Leaving No Pillar Behind, a unified approach.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is captured perfectly in her own words. She states, from the agency of individuals who choose to litter public spaces to the agency of business and state actors, no one must be left behind. This quote just beautifully unites that micro act of dropping a piece of trash on the sidewalk with the macro actions of entire states and massive global corporations. It's all connected through human agency and our human choices.
Revisiting her framework cements this idea completely. Look at the base there. No one pillar must be left behind. If you remove self-governance, the temple cracks. If you remove global governance, the temple falls. Her message is crystal clear. Climate justice is not a menu where we can just pick and choose which levels of society get to participate. If one single pillar fails, the entire structure of climate justice collapses. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today, and I really want to leave you with a provocative thought inspired by her contemplations. We've looked at global finance, corporate circularity, and household energy. But remember that very first pillar? So ask yourself right now, how will you intentionally change your behavior to strengthen your pillar of climate justice today? Because you are part of this global governance structure. So what's your next move? Thanks so much for joining me to explore this incredible framework. And hey, keep asking the hard questions.